Hello and welcome to another Victoria 3 video. This time we're going to be looking at the developers' responses to community feedback in Dev Diary 26, that being on Peace Deals. Now, I do recall that I very much enjoyed this Dev Diary and didn't find anything egregious about it or anything to complain about. I did very much like everything that I saw. Let's see if that still holds true when we read some of the developer feedback. So, without further ado, to answer several questions about the topic, there are currently no plans to allow for adding of war goals after the war starts, as doing so opens up for a lot of ways to circumvent the diplomatic play phase. You go in with light demands to get the support in the play, and then start demanding outrageous things once the war starts, for example. If we do add such a mechanic, it would have to allow the various actors in the war to reconsider their stance, open up for intervention, and so on, which are all neat ideas, but a complex addition that would need substantial design and iteration pass. So, yeah, this is something that I've seen quite a lot of, the sentiment of not being able to add in war goals mid-war being, firstly, ahistorical, and secondly, just not good for gameplay reasons. It's the same kind of sentiment that we saw when we learned that we couldn't add in extra powers into wars after the war started. So things like World War I really can't happen historically, because to think of it in this kind of system, the powers in World War I would have to have the express intention of dismantling Austria-Hungary from the very start of the war, and that just wasn't the case. That they did not have that as one of their war goals. And then, you know, the many-sided switching of Italy also not really possible or feasible in the game either, with this system. So it would be nice if they do figure out a way to add it into the game. If it's not in on release, obviously that would suck. We all want absolutely everything the game's ever going to have to be out on release, but obviously that's not really feasible really either. But it would be nice if they look into it and see if they can find a way to both add war goals and extra parties into wars after they started, even if it is limited to just Great Wars that, I mean, in Victoria 2 start after, I believe, 1890. As long as even if they just limit it to Great Wars, then I would be totally comfortable and fine with that. But it would be nice to have something there to facilitate that kind of play. Would Unify a Region be a war goal or a decision? If the second one, when could we expect dev diaries about events and decisions? So there is a special diplomatic play to facilitate the formation of certain nations such as Germany. More on this in another time. Lovely. Good stuff. German unification CB makes, or diplomatic play, perfectly reasonable. Will peace deals have an effect on domestic policies too? For example, if you lose territory, it could end up destabilizing the country, or pops joining revanchist movements. Or on the other hand, the annexation of land upsetting pops who are against territorial expansion or satisfying jingoistic imperialist pops. Can the game simulate internal pressures like what happened in the Mexican secession, in which the Whigs protested against the land grab, and some, in accordance with Manifest Destiny, advocated for the full annexation of Mexico? So right now, no. That which is, you know, immediately unfortunate and disappointing. But it is something that they are actively looking into, as they always want to strengthen the ties between politics system and other mechanics. Yeah, I can totally see that as being very legitimate. Taking maybe Britain as an example here. In 1836, Britain was kind of in full swing on the anti-slavery crusade. Things like the West Africa Squadron taking up vast amounts of British wealth to cease the Atlantic slave trade. I would argue that potentially it could be a good idea if the parties like intelligentsia, parties like the church, would be very happy, or they would get bonuses to their happiness or their loyalty or what have you, if you were to go to war to ban slavery in a country. I'd say that would be a really cool move, if that was to be the case. And yeah, just imperialist or jingoist pops being happy with war, or rural pops being unhappy with conquest. Something along those lines would be really nice to have. So we'll see. Is capitulation the only way a minor participant can exit the war? No room for separate pieces. I think it should be possible to white piece some minor participants at some point, if, say, they are completely irrelevant on the other side of the globe. Yes, though bear in mind that there's no demands on the country in question, capitulation is effectively white peace. Alright, fair enough. That's good. So am I right in assuming that this means there is no longer such a thing as separate peace? Yes, there is. What is to now prevent a small nation from basically tacking itself into a squabble between large countries and then having outrageous demands that they won't let go of until the larger country does all the fighting for them? Is the larger country's only recourse to basically give in to their enemies' demands even if they're winning? Shouldn't they be able to basically say, no, Krakow does not get to annex Germany, and I'm going to take this smaller state and leave the war? The smaller country can't simply add demands that the war leader didn't agree to. And if they are the war leader, then the Allies will need to have backed up their claims during the diplomatic play. Things like this is the reason that we're currently not allowing the addition of war goals after the play is over. Alright, fair enough. I think this is interesting. So small countries being unable to add war goals unless the war leader on their side agrees is, I don't think, something we saw in the diplomatic play dev diary, but yeah, that's certainly interesting. Numerous 19th century conflicts ended with territorial concessions in exchange for a bag of cash. It isn't explicitly stated, but I'm guessing it would be possible to make war end faster by offering, for example, Mexico a bunch of cash if they will secede California in a peace deal. So war reparations is the way that money changes hands during peace deals currently. I do think the idea of being able to negotiate monetary settlements in addition to the current war goals is interesting, but nothing to that we're committing to at this point. Would those monetary settlements be done all in one go? Like, for example, the Mexican-American War. America did, in fact, give money to Mexico for their conquests. It was a joke of an amount, but it was an amount. Was that amount paid in full immediately, or was it, we'll give you a certain amount of dollars every month or every year for X number of years? Because like war reparations, like if you can stipulate how long they last for, then I think kind of it's not really necessary to have big lump sums. And I think, war reparations might even be a bit more historical, but I don't know for sure. What are pressed or unpressed war goals? So a pressed war goal is one that's being demanded in the current peace offer and will be ceded if said peace offer is agreed to. And then you just realized that I said unpressed at one point in the dev diary when I meant unceded, talking about capitulation. Pressed equals being demanded, ceded equals has been enforced or executed. Good. Okay, so that's good to know. Because I did get a little bit confused about some of the images we did see in the dev diary. So that does clear it up a bit. That's good. This seems like a very cool system. One minor thing. Negative values for deaths seem odd. Did Britain invent necromancy? And that's just a UI bug. So, yeah, pretty clear and simple. Also, Count Christo very much always want to pick out UI issues. That's very him. With this system, it seems that if I have a war goal to take an inconsequential island and I conquer the entirety of the British Empire except the capital and that particular island, Britain still wouldn't capitulate. Yes, that is correct, though I'd say that this would amount to a pretty extreme level of war mismanagement on your part. Yeah, basically. How are you guys going to counter human players purposefully keeping a war going forever by not ratifying their allies' peace? Will there be a penalty for refusing to sign a peace deal too many times? So his current thinking is, if the player is occupying their war goals and is able to keep the war support high, eventually the enemy will capitulate and the war will end. If the player themselves is prevented from going below 0 war support because they have an unassailable war goals, and using this to keep the war going forever, the AI should be willing to drop those war goals. And number 3, he's considering adding it so that the war goal that a country is unable to occupy eventually gets automatically dropped. That'd be pretty interesting. It would basically mean that it's impossible for wars to go on forever. Eventually a resolution of some sort would be forced. Alright. Depending on how it's forced, I guess, would be the interesting part. As long as it's not just, in, 5 years, this war goal will cease to be a thing if you don't touch it. That would be a little bit awkward. But yeah, no, that's good that they're thinking of it. Does it strike anyone else? Does it strike anyone else as odd that all combatants have suffered more dead than wounded? I don't know. Yeah, that may be. In pretty much every battle where I've seen reliable casualty reports, there are more wounded than dead. Are all casualties from attrition being treated as fatal? I don't think that makes sense. A soldier who slips in the mud and breaks his leg is an attritional casualty, but not a fatality. All numbers are work in progress, always will be, until the game is out. And even then they're work in progress because things can get balanced after the fact. I'm a bit confused. If the British crush Kanak secession, who are they paying war reparations to? Those war goals cannot actually both be pressed in the same piece. Work in progress interface. Fair enough. Considering we can't direct our generals on what to do, that would hardly be the player's fault. This is a response to this. You most certainly can direct a naval invasion of a specific island state that you're trying to conquer, actually. So, this I think is actually pretty huge. And I'm not going to have a whinge about this. That's not what I'm doing here. But I am going to say it does not fit with the stated aim of, removing micromanagement from armies. If you are playing as Britain, or anyone with a large naval presence, you have way more ability to micro wars than any other nation in the world. Because if you have a large enough navy and can navally invade, you can direct where those naval invasions will land on a state-to-state basis. And that's huge. Say it's England versus France. You can very directly choose to have your armies go into Aquitaine or go into Brittany. You've got so much more control than if you were not able to choose the direct places to land. I find that incredibly interesting and very much against the stated aim and goal, or the policy, I guess, that Paradox are going for with Victoria 3's warfare. I still want more direct control over military matters, and I'm not against this at all. I definitely think it's great that we can choose very specifically where to direct our naval landings. I just think it's a bit of a contradiction to the other military systems in the game. Yeah, but that's basically all I got for you. It's a pretty short one this week. Certainly compared to the previous ones, but again, so was the dev diary itself. But regardless of it being long or short, I hope you did enjoy it. And if you did, feel free to click the like button. Leave me your thoughts and your comments in the comment section below. And maybe if you want to see more Victoria 3 content in the future, then hit up that subscribe button and stick around and get notified with the notification bell and all those other YouTube jazzy things. I don't know, whatever. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.